Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in. You're probably all curious about what is this all about? What is this brand? What is Baong? All right, let me tell you. So first of all, Baong, right? The word Baong, in that word is ong, as you can see, O-N-G. And ong is a reference to, your grandparents, right? This is where we really started it, but the word Baong, what it means altogether is, like Zeus, the man upstairs in the heavenlies. And this is actually a connection to this overall design, and I'm going to tell you about that here in just a second. So, what is Baong? What is the reference to? How does it connect to this top part up here? Let me talk about that then. So right here, as you can see, right, the hairs up here. This is one of the most interesting things, and this is based on an actual historical document that was created. It's about a scholar, a Chinese man that goes into China, and he goes to go find the Mien homeland, right? And what led him on that journey was actually started with a piece that he found. So he studies local ethnic minorities in southern China, and he found a piece of an ox horn. So out of a horn, he found a piece of that, and it was interesting because it had written a last name on it. It had a Chinese character, and that Chinese character represented a last name, right? And that character last name, right, it led to a conversation with a tribal elder, and the tribal elder revealed that there was actually a history about Mien people that talked about this hidden homeland. Right? This hidden homeland was somewhere in China, southern China. But because we had migrated after so many hundreds of years, we kind of lost that. And only by through verbal storytelling were we able to pass on that knowledge. Right? There's a bit of a written history on that, but this set the scholar, this Chinese scholar, on a journey, and he went on this journey to go try to find out more about this place. Does it even exist? Is it real? Right? And he started going around to all the local Mien villages in southern China, and he started finding out that the stories that the elders were talking about were very, very similar. They talked about a beautiful place that opened up, but you had to find it in the mountains. So there's a mountain place. And that's what this top part of this figurine here represents. So if you see the hills up here, these are actually the mountains of that. Now in that story, it talks about how there's a cave just big enough for an ox, right, for an ox to get through that passage. And once you get through that passage of the cave, on the other side, it opens out to a valley. And that's what these eyebrows up here represent. These eyebrows here are actually the rivers that intersect. So after you get through that passageway, you're going to see this valley open up. You're going to see all these rivers, right? And that's what this middle part of the circle here represents, the homeland of Mien people, which they refer to as Qin Jia Dong. Right? Up here you see this it's like a triangle shape right here. This is actually the cave, the passage for you to go through. Now in today's modern history, they actually have found this place, and they actually throw the King Pond Festival there. So if you hear ever like a reference about King Pond, right, and King Pond festivals, there's a King Pond Festival in Oakland, California, but there's also a massive one, right, like the biggest, as you could think of, like say, think of how like Christians go back to, like, they go on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Think of that as our rite of passage to go back to our homeland, and it's in southern China. So they do it every year. I believe it's around like January, February every year, where they always host this massive King Pond Festival, and it brings in a lot of international people. And if you're a Mien person here in America, you would go back there and you speak to them in Mien language. There's not much dialect. The language is almost the exact same. Right? And it's just crazy that how after all these hundreds of years that we're still interconnected. And that's what has led to creating this design of Baong and what it all represents. Now this bottom part, which you're probably curious about, is why this face, right? Why this face, right? This face is actually historical proof. So in that homeland of ours, Qin Jia Dong, in that valley, there's a site there. So it was like it's not a burial site, but they had a place that they had discovered, and as they were doing like archaeology, surveying the land and stuff like that, they found pieces of relics. They found these urns, right? And inside these urns, it turned out that there was a figurine. And on that figurine on the side, it was actually this face right here. So this face, it's like an omnipresent face, right? They're like, why that face? Well, that has to do with possibly what we refer to as, like, what the Chinese people refer to Mien people as yao. And that word is actually derogatory. means dog, right? Yao people or dog people. But in ancient times, Yao might have been reference to indigenous people, indigenous mountain people. And that's the reference up to Mien people because we lived in the mountains. Now that urn that they found in the burial site, which had this face, they took that urn to a university lab and they had it carbon dated. Right? And what they do is they find out how old is this. It's kind of like how when they look at trees, you cut a tree in half and you look at the rings, right? They look at how old it is. Well, that's what they did with this urn, and they found out that it was dated back between 1200 to 1300 years old. That is crazy, right? The Mien culture has probably persisted even longer than that, maybe up to 2,000 years old. But from that proof that they found in this holy land of ours is 1200 to 1300 years old, right? And the reference here, it had this face on it, right? Which probably makes a lot of sense why Mien people in our traditional clothing, right? In weddings you see, the guys, right? They have the crossing, right? That's a reference to cover the hair. And in the ancient times, they talked about, in like elder stories, they talked about covering the head, right? And in the old mythological story that ties back to this design is about a dog that becomes a human, and he covers his head because of his dog name, right? So, I mean, this all is Baong, a reference to creating this design of a mythological person, of ancient history, of iu-mien history. And the outer borders right here, as you see, this is actually tiger claw. So there's like a claw going up, claw going down. It keeps repeating over and over and over. And if you ever see this pattern, it's actually quite common. So in where moms carry babies in the back, that swang bui, that's actually, there's the pattern of the tiger claws repeated all over. And that represents protection. And as you see here with this all coming full circle, we want to protect Mien culture. And that's what this border represents. Protecting Mien culture, creating awareness. And that's what Baong. And that's how we came up with Baong and what we stand for today. And that's just only the beginning. So thank you for tuning in.